When it comes to data centers, some Ohio communities are welcoming them, others shunning them. The issue has become a major talking point in the campaign trail, and it's also happening in Washington. Efforts to understand and regulate data centers. That's today's big story. Well, as communities around here decide how they want to handle data centers, they're looking at other places that already have some. For example, New Albany, that's a suburb of Columbus. They even have a website where they document their data center success, which includes $83 billion in total private investment. They have 15 companies operating more than 40 facilities. Now, they say it's created jobs, increased the tax base, while also being strict on noise, water, and air quality rules. This is a city that the city of Findlay is looking to model their own policies after. Mayor Christina Mern had set up a meeting between New Albany officials and city council members in Findlay virtually, but canceled that due to transparency concerns. But she did say in a statement to 13 Action News, "I still do believe that the council and the public are best served when members of council have opportunities to learn and prepare themselves to engage in thoughtful, informed discussions with the public." And Middleton Township, the zoning board there, recommending a denial of a rezoning request last night. That request would be rezoning a 39-acre parcel on State Route 25 from agricultural to light industrial. That would be for a temporary meta construction parking for the gigantic meta facility that is out there. The commission making that vote after hearing from different residents in the community, but it is worth noting that the Board of Trustees there in the township holds the final decision-making authority. The board will be holding a special meeting to vote on that matter. Did you know now where a data center debate stretching back over 3 years continues to play out? This is all centered around an empty lot near the corner of Reman Road and State Route 163. Neighbors worry that if a data center is built there, it could lower home values, strain the water supply, and create noise and light pollution. Council says that any data center would require a setback of 1,000 feet along 163, which is more than 3 times Hilliard's data center, that's just outside Columbus, which council members recently visited in light of the concerns.
I went online and bought my own meter to test what the actual sound is. We knew we could zone against loud noises or to a certain limit. We knew really what that limit sounded like. You know, to tell somebody, oh, we're looking at 45 decibels. Well, what is 45 decibels? And that's what we wanted to know.
Council members say their readings from the Hilliard site picked up at about 42 decibels. That was 230 feet from the data center. Their next step is continuing to work on zoning for that property. Now, other Northwest Ohio residents are making an active push against these types of projects. In White House and Waterville just yesterday, a group was out and about trying to gather signatures to get an amendment on the Ohio ballot. The group wants to ban large-scale data centers, which use more than 25 megawatts of energy per month.
I think it's important to bring more notice to the community that it's going to affect, whether it's going to be your water, your farmland, your air, the noise pollution, light pollution. If people are more aware of what's going on, I think they'll have a better idea how they're going to be impacted by all of it and what they can do to help us, you know, minimize the size of what is going to impact the entire community.
Now, as reported, the Grassroots organization Conserve Ohio tried to get the issue before voters this year, but after missing the deadline, the group is trying to get on the ballot for next year. And just last week, a group called United Neighbors of Oregon, they turned in a petition to force a public vote on a project there. The group collected more than 2,000 signatures in just 3 weeks. The petition asked voters to choose whether Oregon should limit data size centers, keeping them within 25 megawatts or less, meaning no large-scale projects in the city limits. Organizers say that should be plenty of power for the city.
It would be a relatively small building full of computer service, but not very large. Certainly, as far as the power and infrastructure, it's easily handled by the existing power that's available here.
This effort to limit data centers in Oregon comes as the city debates a multi-billion-dollar project. It would be built near Corduroy and Wynn roads with an estimated operational capacity of 500 megawatts. There have been a number of local governments that have passed moratoriums on these projects. Reasons range from concerns brought up by residents to having more time to study data centers and the potential impact on community resources. There are 3 townships in Lucas County, Monclova, Richfield, and Waterville. They've all passed a 12-month moratorium, as did the city of Maumee. Fulton County, the village of Archbold, they passed a 6-month moratorium. That happened in April. The data centers are becoming a major issue in Ohio's governor race. Late last month, Democratic candidate Dr. Amy Acton announcing support for a conditional moratorium on data centers in Ohio. She explained her stance to our sister station in Cincinnati.
And I want to make sure that, these companies are bringing their own energy. BYOE is how I've been saying it.
That's funny.
And the thing is, it's not just people's electric bills, it's our manufacturers. We don't want to see our manufacturers going out of business because of energy costs going up. But the other thing is that we want to make sure it's union jobs that we have. We want to make sure that communities can see through these deals. They're often done in secrecy through something called NDAs, which we think they shouldn't be able to do. We want to make sure that if you're going to try to do business here, you're doing it in a brownfield or a old, sort of industrial site instead of in our prime and ever-shrinking farmland.
On the Republican side, Vivek Ramaswamy recently laying out a plan with 3, quote, non-negotiable requirements for data centers. They include making sure nearby Ohio families receive free electricity by providing power or compensation to lower bills, paying full property taxes, and then using those revenues to provide property tax relief to Ohio homeowners while complying with air and water quality standards, minimizing the water use and building on brownfield land and industrial sites rather than farmland. Now, efforts continuing in the state and federal level to put Ohioans in charge of that issue when it comes to data centers. 2 Republican state reps from Southwest Ohio have introduced House Bill 983. That's known as the Data Center Accountability and Citizen Protect Act. The bill would require voter approval before any large-scale data center is built or is expanded. It would ban future local tax incentives. It would force operators to generate their own electricity and require full public disclosure of chemicals that are used in the cooling system.
Standards for water quality so that we know what the data centers are putting back into our water supply so that we can protect our precious walleye and the people who fish them. And it addresses NDAs. The communities need the right, and they should have the voice to be able to tell their elected officials and have a choice as to whether data centers come into their backyard.
In our nation's capital, Ohio's Democratic Congressman Greg Landsman, he's introduced 3 separate bills, all targeting data center accountability.
Forces the data centers to pay for everything. There's no reason why our taxpayers or ratepayers pay for any of this. They have so much money. The second is getting rid of these NDAs. Everything should be done publicly. And the third, this most recent bill, requires there to be a national standard in terms of the environmental impact.
Congressman Landsman wants federal oversight studying noise, air, and water pollution, along with carbon emissions and electronic waste. He says families deserve the information along with the peace of mind. There's a lot of changing information about data centers every day, and we're learning new things, which includes new projects and efforts to regulate those projects. For the latest developments, you want to stick with the 13 Action News app.